and this is about the current Indian standing. It says Modi threatens to turn India into a one-party state. This was a statement issued by The Economist, means that he is supporting the BJP to an extent that it seems that the only party that would remain in India would be BJP, an extremist party, a fundamentalist party, a party which has a very, very negative direction. Primarily, they are just abusing the human rights. The violations that are taking place are unbelievable. Whether you talk about the Muslims or you talk about the current problems of the farmers, mostly Sikhs in Delhi and close by areas, you talk about the other minorities, whether you talk about the Christians, Dalits or the Sikhs. This is a reality that India definitely has a certain design, and this current government of Narendra Modi, the government of BJP, the government of Hindutva, the government which is an extremist form of governance pattern that has there, and primarily going after the minorities and creating an absolute division, just like the Americans. There is going to be a division within the ranks also as far as the political dynamics are concerned. So let's see where it leads. But erosion of checks and balances in India, that has also created a lot of problem. Whether you talk about the military, you talk about the judiciary, you talk about any other important component, they are all under the influence of Hindutva, under the influence of Narendra Modi. The recent example is of Goswami, when he was picked up on the charges which were framed against him, and that was under 302, 302 as they say in Hindi. And that man came out, and when the bail was granted to him, he came out as a victorious man. He was chanting slogans as if he has won the election or something. This is what the real face of India is. If you're an extremist, you are an untouchable. Otherwise, it's your choice. To talk about this, we have been joined in by Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi Saab, senior analyst, former defense minister, former defense secretary. Jal Saab, thank you very much for your time, sir.
It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure.
My second guest is Syed Muhammad Ali, who's an expert on foreign affairs. Thank you very much, Syed Muhammad Ali, for your time as well. And we'll also be talking to Ahmed Qureshi, who's a senior journalist and is also a senior analyst. Jal Saab, if I may put the first question to you, sir. This report of Economist that has been about the Indian government, now very categorically they have stated that the erosion of checks and balances are there in India. Different institutions are under the influence of the current government of Hindutva, or BJP as they call it, and they are very biased. You talk about the implementation of draconian laws in India. That has also been reported by The Economist. Your take, sir, since it's a very, very comprehensive report, I want you to throw light on that aspect.
Thank you very much. The first thing, I think we are all aware that Economist is a very widely read and a very respectable, journal. It's read all over the world. And secondly, whatever they have said is, I think they're just narrating the facts. If they say that Modi government is going to stay, it is not that they are supporting it. Actually, they are just giving their assessment based on the facts, based on the readings. And as you have said yourself, I think they have touched all aspects. This government is interfering with judiciary, using armed forces for their political motives, and everywhere, wherever is possible, they are mutilating the entire, vitiating the atmosphere and all that. And in spite of that, they are likely to continue because they have created, I would say, such a vast majority of people polarized negatively on one side and made them extremists, that they are there to stay for some time. But as it always happens, whenever there is polarization in a society, in a country, and extremism takes roots, we have seen many countries, we have also experienced it ourselves. It creates a lot of havoc and mayhem, and the country suffers. And that is what I think we can see as far as India is concerned. They are likely to, after some time, they will not be able to take this weight of this extremism, and they will succumb in terms of economy, in terms of polity, in terms of other indicators, social indicators. So actually, they are doing a lot of harm to themselves. So I would say that Economist was just stating the facts and very sad facts. And we are not happy at all because we are next door neighbors. All spillovers are going to come on this side, especially whatever they are doing with the minorities, the Muslims, the Sikhs, the Dalits, the Christians, and even I would say sane-minded Hindus. So I do not know where it is. It will stop. The world has started taking notice, but I think very sluggishly, very slowly, and they are not agile enough to really stem this things which are getting out of hands over there. But I think with China on one side and Pakistan on the other side, and their internal problems within India, they will be in some nutcracker, if not sooner than later.
Jal Sahab, do you believe that Narendra Modi is still living in the 18th or maybe 17th century mindset, sir? That he really wants Hindus to dominate in this region and he just really wants to flush out all the minorities. And let's not call them minorities because look at the population of Muslims there in India. And the kind of demographics the Indians have, the kind of cultural aspect, if you look at it, sir, starting from Assam, Bihar to all the way to Khalistan area, you go up north in Kashmir and then you talk about the Tamil side, there is a lot of division, sir, within the process of thinking even. And when you talk about the education, that is another very important. You talk about languages, you talk about so many other ethnic divisions they have. Do you think, sir, when economist says that he is actually, motivating and radicalizing the entire Indian population primarily, will it be something which you believe is a doable kind of a thing, or sir, this could really turn out to be so different that it could lead into something like a civil war situation? Because if you look at the current situation, sir, look at the economic factor, more than 8% of their economy has gone down, sir, and this is the perfect example of perfect recession after the independence of India. So looking at these factors on one side and then talking about the number of people living and then igniting them, pressurizing them, creating that kind of chaos, do you believe that it's something doable, or it is an imagination of Narendra Modi which he wants to implement all over India? Jal Sahab?
I think that in short term, it is not only doable, they're already doing it. And we can all watch it and we can see it. And that is because the reason there's a wave, I would say, either we call it a rightist wave or a sentimental wave, taking the entire world by a bit of surprise, because whatever has happened in certain European countries also, and in Americas also, and elsewhere, that politics is no more based on logic or analysis or cool thinking. It is all about sentiments and rhetorics and naras, as they call it. And this has actually swayed in vast tracts of the world. And the same phenomena, I think they have taken advantage of in India. But I agree with you in one sense that it cannot be long lasting, because human beings have a tendency to correct their, tracks whenever they get misguided. So it cannot go for a very long time. But in the short term, sorry to say that they have succeeded and they are succeeding. And only some big accident will bring some sanity. And let us hope that accident doesn't affect us or affect us in a positive way. And they learn their lessons. I think they will only learn their lessons through the hard way. I don't see they are listening to the saner voices within their society, which are in plenty, but they are subdued for the time being. So whatever I see in the world happening and whatever I see in India happening, it is going to stay for some time.
All right. Now, moving on to Sayyid Muhammad Ali, when we see the death of the secular India, this kind of a statement as a heading on any article for that matter, or when we say that the RSS and the idea of Akhand Bharat seems to be prevailing now in India, what would be your reaction on that?
Faisal, I think this is a belated but accurate realization in the mainstream Western media and press about the danger that India poses not just to the region but to the world. And that is something which our foreign policy must focus and sustain. That not just for this region, India is a growing threat to the international peace and security. If you just give me 1 minute, the four indicators that Jan Sahab also pointed out are a matter of concern for us, which are the domestic indicators. You look at the political system; it is increasingly becoming a one-party system. The democratic values are not evident. Secondly, you look at their economic system, and you yourself are an expert in economy, and you know that only in the last quarter, the Indian economy has shrunk 23.9%, which is the biggest and first and most important recession in the entire Indian history since 1947. The third indicator is the social indicator. You look at the situation of minorities, whether it is Muslims, whether it is Dalits, whether it is Sikhs. I think the situation is worse than at any other time since 1947. The fourth indicator, and let me tell your audience and viewers, is the diplomatic indicator. India is actually, despite its growing strategic relevance for the West, is becoming regionally isolated and insecure from whether it is Bangladesh, whether it is Nepal, whether it is Afghanistan, whether it is Iran, whether it is China, whether it is Pakistan. It does not have normal, stable relations with any of its neighbors. So only yesterday, in fact, today, something very interesting has happened. India, like Pakistan, is a member of Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Correct.
And among the 8 countries, India is the only one which is opposing BRI and CPEC. It is very unnatural that on one side it wants to be an ally and part of the Quad, and secondly, it is also at the same time member of SCO when it is becoming an impediment and a roadblock in the economic integration of this region. So therefore, I think based on these arguments, I think its only attempt is to attract technology and access to high-tech military hardware from the West. And that is also going to be a danger for the world, only for three reasons. Very quickly, Faisal. India is an anti-status quo power. So eventually it will be a threat to the world order. That is something that the West must recognize, number one. Secondly, it is an illiberal society, and it is not its values which the Biden administration must recognize is that it no longer represents the true values on which any functional democracy can survive.
Correct.
Thirdly, its commitment towards China. Most importantly, Faisal, its commitment towards the US against counterbalancing China is also questionable. Only recently we organized an international webinar, and leading US security experts are beginning to question Indian commitment towards US goals. So based on these things, I think India, the Western powers should see through the Indian facade and a false commitment of counterbalancing China only to attract technology and military hardware to browbeat and threaten its smaller neighbors.
All right, that makes a lot of sense. So primarily, when you talk about the US agenda or the US goals and the way India is being used, I think first of all, they have chosen a wrong country. I believe they cannot handle. They have got so many of their internal issues at the present times. I mean, they cannot afford to. I was just, in fact, I was going through one of the articles yesterday, and I read that the Indian government is ready to inject $1.5 trillion. Just look at the in order to give boost to their economy, and I'm sure they will be able to acquire a lot of technology, a lot of other requirements from the West, and I'm sure the shift is very much obvious, very much visible, and we can see the inclination of the Indians towards the West. Now, we have also been joined in by Ahmed Qureshi. Assalamu alaikum, Ahmed, and thank you very much for taking out your time and talking to us.
Always great to join you, Faisal.
Yeah. Now, since we were talking about this very important report in The Economist, I mean, this is one of the top-notch magazines, I would say, And they say that India is no more secular. Modi has threatened to turn India into a one-party state. And, obviously, whatever we have been talking about in the recent past, I mean, they have actually concluded and they have drawn a very interesting conclusion also. Now, your take on that part, Ahmed?
Yes, Faisal, we've actually been noticing a shift and change in the way the international community sees India. And this shift has been underway for at least the last 2 or 3 years. So these kind of reports have been growing in frequency over these last 3 or 4 years. And this is very interesting. And I must notice as well that this shift in the way the international community, and when I say the international community, I mean people who deal with international relations, people who deal with state relations, people who deal also with the media. We've seen this shift. For example, 4 years ago, it was nearly impossible to find influential international media outlets critical of India's human rights record within India and also inside Indian-occupied Kashmir. This has changed drastically. So this is a shift. It's a major shift. It's something that we also in Pakistan, Faisal, by the way, took time to recognize. But I think it's there, and I've been one of those people who've been, for quite some time, have been saying that we should also adjust ourselves to and our, let's say, media policy and our diplomacy to exploit this very, very important shift in how the world is now looking at India. So just as your previous distinguished speaker, my friend Muhammad Ali was mentioning, that the West, that the world is now really beginning to debate what kind of role India is supposed to have and whether India can be reliable to uphold the values that India for so long has been claiming that it represents in terms of liberal democracy, a plural society, and freedoms and so forth. So this is a major change. And I think this report, and I'm really very glad that you're highlighting it, it's very important because not many people are really paying attention to this in our country, obviously because we have so much happening in our politics, so it's natural. But I'm very happy that you are highlighting this. We need to see this as something that should be exploited. We need to adjust our media policy, the way we are speaking to the world. Now that the world is looking at India through a different lens, and despite, and one more thing that I think that we should also highlight, we often have been very skeptical about how the international media normally used to cover only one side of India, the positive side, and there have been some positive things after the end of the Cold War in India, maybe the opening up of their market and so forth, and how they embraced internationalism. But the very same, and we used to normally in Pakistan say that this international media overlooks some disturbing signs that were emerging in the last 2 decades in India, namely and most importantly, extremism, religious extremism that was emerging and rearing its head in India, and the international media failed to notice that initially, and we thought the reason for that was that India was spending millions of dollars on improving its image enhancement advertising in international media, and we thought somehow that would stop the international media from looking at the other side of India. But recently, and I'm surprised...
But the reality is that when the magazine, which is Economist and one of the top, as I earlier mentioned, one of the headlines says that India's diminishing democracy. Now, that is something which most likely the Indians would hate to read, but this is a reality. Earlier, nobody used to write about the Indians in such a way because they had such an influence. Now, I think maybe Pakistani government has been able to highlight the issue to an extent. Secondly, a lot of people have practically seen what's going on in the Indian illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir, for that matter, not only over there, but look at the farmers' protest, the way they were treated. Or for example, in Assam, Bihar and elsewhere, the kind of attitude in Manipur, Jharkhand, etc. And then you go up north, look at what is happening in Kashmir. And it seems that if the same attitude of Narendra Modi continues, they're very close to an absolute breakup, and you never know, there would be some sane voices within the Indian population and within the Indian Parliament who would raise the concerns, because where Narendra Modi is taking India, I think that's an absolutely place of no return. Your take, Ahmed?
I think this is really very scary and very disturbing, and you just put your finger really, Faisal, on the thing that really worries people like me as well, and I'm sure it worries a lot of people in Pakistan, because for a country the size of India, for this to happen there, for the national fabric of such a huge state, such as India's, and many people, as you know, have been over the years who've been researching India have been saying that the state is sustaining itself, but really there's so many fault lines within India, and the kind of policies that Modi is pursuing, God forbid if that leads to the breakup in the fabric, the social fabric, the political fabric of India, that would be a nightmare for neighboring countries of India, including us. I mean, imagine if there were millions and millions of refugees who would run, God forbid, if there was a situation similar to an internal collapse of the state, of the social fabric. And when I say this, I'm not theorizing, I'm not dreaming. This has happened. Just 5 or 6 years ago, there have been riots in Indian cities where people came out in major Indian cities like Mumbai and Pune and other cities and actually went down on the streets to beat up immigrants from poorer northeastern Indian states and pushed them and made them run away back to their home states. And this has happened. So you have really fault lines. You have ethnic tensions. You have linguistic tensions. These are major things. And Prime Minister Modi has really highlighted and made these fault lines even sharper now. And so when we talk, Faisal, when we sit here and talk about the possibility of India collapsing from within, and when we talk about the possibility that there could be a sharper breakup, a collapse of the social fabric in India, it's a reality, and it would be extremely dangerous for neighboring countries like Bangladesh and Pakistan and others to even think about the prospects of refugees coming to the border regions. So it's really a serious thing, and I think it's a matter that we need to really highlight and make the international community aware of, because normally the international community reacts after the fact, and I think it's a time that we make this thing clear internationally and make the people understand that this is a serious concern for us in a country like Pakistan, and it must be also a concern for other neighbors of India. It can be highlighted in a way that would show our real concern at what is happening inside India, so that whatever we say about this is not taken in terms of the usual rivalry between Pakistan and India. So I'm not saying this, for example, Faisal, because, well, we have a rivalry with India. Yes, we do have a rivalry, but I'm saying this because this is a real concern.
All right. Now, Jalal Saab, I just want you to, in fact, rather explain this very interesting happening. If you remember, a few months ago, there was this, I think he was picked up from Bengal, if I'm not wrong. There was this Father Stan Swami. He was about 83 years old, a patient of Parkinson's, and who had championed the rights for tribal people, and is being held as an alleged Maoist rebel. And he was picked up and taken to Mumbai. And he said that I can't even hold a cup of tea. I mean, please, whatever you want to do. But he was taken to that prison and he was kept there for 20 days. Whereas when Arnab Goswami, who is directly linked in a murder case of an architect and who committed suicide and wrote a letter that if, I'm killing myself just because of this man, because he's taken money and this is what he has done. And we end up hearing that he was picked up, and later on the man comes out as a champion, raising slogans and being pampered by the people who came, all these extremists. And he was treated as if he was a leader, a political leader or somebody of that sort, was granted bail too. I mean, look at the difference, sir. Is this where the judiciary of India is taking India, sir? What are people thinking out there then?
You see, once you talk about a regime which is extremist in their approach, and they have taken a line, a hard line based on religious extremism, and so such events are very normal. And if they can, blame a pigeon that this is from Pakistan's ISI, that poor father which they were blaming, I think not a big deal, and whatever they are doing to free their own people. I would like to say a few words about what Ahmed was saying, which was very important. He painted a scenario of internal implosion, and let me paint another scenario, which is equally probable, and that is if they externalize their internal problems, then what is going to happen? They are a great military power. They have a big political clout in the world. So for them, if they feel that internally the things are getting out of their hand, they can always externalize the issue. And I mean, with such a large army, with atomic, power behind it, they can do so many things to their neighbors, like smaller neighbors, Nepal and Bangladesh and Sri Lanka, and even, I mean, against Pakistan. Although we have our deterrent in place, but still, they have certain wrong notions, and they also keep in mind that their mindset, the way they have been treated by Chinese on the borders, the way our Air Force, gave them a very befitting response, and the whole world knows it, the way they have not been able to control the movement within occupied Kashmir. So all these things can actually get externalized, and they can, as they keep on saying also, and I don't take it as a rhetoric, once they say that we can attack Azad Kashmir and get it liberated according to their perception. Although if their planners and strategic community, they see the things in reality, they should never do that, but they can always make a mistake. So the other scenario, the one scenario which Ahmed was painting, the other scenario that I have painted, both are equally dangerous, and both will have a lot of repercussions on in the region as a whole. Even internal implosion will affect the neighbors, and external, of course, it will be against the neighbors. So that thing also should be projected internationally, and I think there is some realization the world over what Indians are doing. And you said in one of your sentences that as Americans are trying to exploit India, actually I would say it is otherwise. Indians are trying to exploit Americans. They will never stand against Chinese. I can assure you. I can, being a military man, I know the comparative military prowesses. They will only use this ploy to get maximum technology and military hardware to be used against Pakistan, so that they can, resolve this Kashmir issue according to their own desires forever. That would be their desire. Of course, it is not going to happen, inshallah. So I think the interesting times are coming, and then you see the flux which is in the region, the way after the new American president comes, what will be their policy with Iran, what happens in Afghanistan, and what will be their policy as far as Kashmir and India is concerned. So actually, we have to stay with our fingers crossed and see, and also do something to make sure that all American policies and all policies of great powers, they are beneficial for the region as a whole. And one big development which has just happened today, you must have heard that Chinese defense minister was here, and for the first time, you would have learned, although we know for a very long time that Pakistan and China have very deep political relations, diplomatic relations, military relations, and in many other fields, economic also. But this time, why did they felt necessary to sign an MOU, which is not the norm of Chinese, way, and it has been, aired also in the media that defense MOU has been signed. So,
Yeah.
which means that there is a shift going on in this region also, and as I said, that this flux will get solidified or will become more clear in the weeks and months to come.
All right. Now, Jalsa, one more important area. Now, you mentioned about the kind of technology the Indians plan to get from the US. And obviously, when you talk about technology, you talk about the 5G concepts, and then you talk about the high-tech industries, maybe hardware purchase, and so on and so forth. And obviously, they do not want to fight the Chinese. They know what would be the consequences. So they look towards us, and obviously this is what India has done always. My one point, which is very, very intriguing in a way, that it feels in one way or the other. I mean, today I was reading a story in the Indian local newspaper, Hindustan Times, and there was this interview of the Indian military chief, General NN. And interestingly, what happened was that he, in fact, again criticized Pakistan. He says, under the cover of extreme fire by the Pakistani military, they are trying to send in the terrorists. Now, my point is, A, nobody can cross the LOC, sir, because it's totally fenced. There is proper barbed wire, and there is a proper lighting system they have. Then such a heavy, presence of the military forces totally eyeing towards Pakistan. It is not possible, number one. But do you think the Indians are planning something like 26/11, or for that matter, what happened in Kashmir when Burhan Wani was martyred, or something of that similar nature, sir? Something that they would plan in-house and then they would implement it and they would raise fingers towards Pakistan. Primarily, sir, it seems that now the next 2 to 3 months are really crucial, really important.
Our foreign office has done two good things as far as this Kashmir is concerned, beside many other points, of course. One, that I think the Kashmir problem is now so widely known in the world. You must have seen that it is coming in the main media and social media, and also at the government level, at the people level, at UN. So this is one. And secondly, now this propaganda, Indian propaganda, will never work, that the resistance fighters within occupied Kashmir, they have to do anything to with the terrorism. So these two achievements, I think, are quite clear. So any amount of propaganda, whether by Indian military or Indian political leadership, that Pakistan is betting some trouble within occupied Kashmir, will fall flat as far as the international community is concerned. And the outcome, the danger which you are indicating at, I said that one, because of the mindset, because they got a beating from both sides, China and Pakistan, and to be a worthy ally to a superpower, they need to prove themselves, and they can't prove it against China, so they might think of proving it against us. And especially once they are not succeeding in controlling the movement within illegally occupied Kashmir, and also whatever is happening within the mainland of India. So I agree with you. There's a big possibility of some mischief. But then let me also say that within two nuclear powers, an open war is a remote possibility. I will not say that it is impossible. It is a remote possibility. So what will happen is what is actually already happening, and that is my friends in the government and also in the forces. Some of the people that don't agree with me, Ahmed being one of them, that we should have the right of doing the same to Indians what they are doing to us, and I am talking about hybrid war. So once we have so much of evidence with us, and we are asking the world that please come and help us, we are asking our neighbors and the region and all that, so they have a legitimate question to ask, that what are you doing about it? So I think we need to work not only in the field of diplomacy, we have to work a lot in lawfare, we have to work a lot in political arena, and also in the military arena, so that the wholesome response is given as far as India is concerned. Otherwise, they will take us for granted. They might take us for granted.
Well, that's a very, very important and valid point, sir. When we talk about the smart power or we talk about the soft power, I think it's much more appropriate in today's world as compared to the hard power. With the kinetic warfare versus the non-kinetic means, in this particular case, I think non-kinetic means would be more meaningful. Now, coming to you, Syed Muhammad Ali, obviously, when we say that Pakistan is a nuclear power, that's a deterrent we have. And other than that, I think we have whatever the Indians had in their mind. We had a counter policy. We had a proper planning to sort of, look after any problem that is posed to Pakistan from the Indian side. But General Saab raised a very important point, Ali, and you've been working on those lines as well. I mean, when you talk about the kinetic warfare versus the non-kinetic warfare, don't you think this hybrid warfare that has been imposed in Pakistan, either through Afghanistan or through the other side of the border, we need to do something similar? I think this is where we need to hit them and hit them really hard.
A very important question, Faisal. And let me start by endorsing Naeem's point of view. But let me say at the outset that there are three reasons why India poses this region and the world a greater danger than ever before. Firstly, because of domestic failures, weaknesses, and challenges. The political leadership of India needs an external diversion, both for the domestic audience and also for the international audience, and also to assure its Western allies that its military prowess is available and useful. So that is the greatest danger. However, because of a very credible nuclear deterrence that Pakistan has and is constantly improving, that is exactly why India is waging hybrid warfare, because it has realized through experience and number or at least six different crises. For the benefit of your viewers, let me quickly identify whether it was brass tacks, whether it was 1990, whether it was Kargil, whether it was standoff 2001 and 2, whether it was Mumbai. At no point in time India was able to translate its conventional advantage into military success. And they realized that's why they tried to come up with new doctrines like cold start doctrine, then surgical strike, and we keep on because their political compulsion is that the military needs to justify to their political leadership and the nation that this defense budget, which is 7 to 8 times greater than India, is not a waste of money because Pakistan embarrasses them and the nuclear deterrence prevents them from escalating to their advantage. That's why they are trying to destabilize us politically. That's why they're supporting outfits like TTP and BLA in Pakistan. That's why they are trying to economically isolate and coerce us through FATF. That's why they are trying to make Pakistan look bad through their use of media. And let me tell your viewers very importantly, Faisal, just like Economist, an equally important and influential business group, you are familiar with it, Bloomberg.
Yeah, yeah.
Only 2 days ago, one of the leading editorials, and your viewers must read it. It is more extensive than the Economist report and equally important. It is titled Why I Am Losing Hope in India. It is written by a very influential Indian, Andy Mukherjee. And his three main arguments for the benefit of your viewers are that the Indian dream, the rising, shining India that they thought of in early 90s is gone. This is coming from an Indian diaspora, number one. Secondly, they're saying India is looking inwards. So it is not available for sharing of common interests with the outside world. And thirdly, the dismal economic performance is such that the Indian diaspora is really worried about the investment and security of their money which they are sending to India, and they are fearing India cannot even compete with Bangladesh in terms of the economic growth. And lastly, one of the most influential Indian strategic thinker, like Ashley Tellis recently said in an interview, that US-based Indian diaspora is worried that India will not be able to fulfill the security commitments that the US expects. So on all fronts, India is becoming internally unstable, regionally insecure and isolated, globally unreliable as an international member of the international community. So these things make Pakistan very worried as a neighbor because it provides Indian leadership the reason versions because they have failed to meet the aspirations and expectation of their own people, and also they have not lived up to the security commitments and expectations of their global allies. So for both this global and domestic dynamic, there is a possibility, there is a risk that they might try something irresponsible, uh, Pakistan will have to deal with. But what Pakistani foreign office and our diplomats and experts and journalists like yourself must warn the world that the consequences and the onus of this will remain with the international community if they do not succeed convincing India to behave responsibly and rationally. Because in a nuclearized environment, Pakistan, let me assure you, will we have an approach, we have a policy, we have a doctrine of quid pro plus. So we will
Exactly. This is exactly what my point is, that if they will, again go for a misadventure, this time things would be much different than what we did on the 27th of February. We could have had them, but we just warned them. And I think next time if they plan something of a similar nature, then they exactly know what Pakistan is going to do. Coming to you, Ahmed Qureshi.
To add one sentence to it, even
Yeah,
let
please.
me tell your viewers, very important point, that we could have destroyed many more fighters than we could have.
I
Let
know.
me tell your viewers,
What I was
we
told
did
that
not.
6 of their jets were locked. 6. That's the number. It was a matter of a second. Press the button and the number would have been 8. 2 were already down. 6 more would have been down too. But anyway, Ahmed Qureshi Saab, now last quick comment from you, and that is about a developing scenario on the western side of Pakistan, where in Tehran a few days ago, one of the top scientists, nuclear scientists of Iran, was assassinated. According to the Iranian authorities, they believe that it was a job carried out by the Israelis, but Israelis, they have denied it. But interestingly, now they want that we will respond in a proportionate way and a decisive way. Now, and this is what the Iranians have done earlier after the killing of General Soleimani. Now, what I'm saying is, if something happens, these are the times when Trump is about to leave, and if we see some sort of a reaction coming from the Israelis, because we all know the kind of development that is taking place in the Middle East, in the West Asia, another troubled border would be there with their answer. Ahmed.
Yes, it's a disturbing emerging story. Of course, this is the third important personality assassinated in Iran this year. So before the end of the year, we have a third very high value target person, official, assassinated in Iran. And usually for people who have been studying and following Iranian foreign policy strategy and military strategy, usually Iran has preferred not to retaliate directly, but use other means. And when I say other means, of course, so I refer to retaliation through instead of going for a direct military engagement, using proxies, for example, and Iran has multiple options with that regard when it comes to Israel. Of course, when I say all of this, I would also add very quickly that although this has been the Iranian strategy, never to go for a direct conflict and always go for a roundabout way of retaliation to anything that they deem important.
Ahmed, there was this statement by one of the senior Iranian politician, and he said that we might go for the port of Haifa, and we will respond that way. What if this happens?
Yes, what if? It's a big question, what if? As I said, usually these kind of statements do come from senior Iranian officials, but Iran is a smart country. And Iran has avoided normally direct confrontation and has gone for retaliation through other means. But as you say, if it happens, if the statement of this Iranian official were to become true and an attack was launched directly by Iran on a direct target inside Israel, for example, Port of Haifa, this would be a major escalation, obviously, and this would change the whole calculus in the Middle East. But I would say, based on the past experience, Iran normally avoided direct confrontation and has preferred to go to indirect options, and maybe there are very few actually instances where Iran went for direct confrontation. One of them, of course, was the retaliation to Qasem Soleimani's assassination when they attacked a U.S. base in Iraq. But normally, Iran avoids direct confrontation and goes for indirect means.
But still, I mean, if they have issued a statement, that means that they might be thinking about something. But anyway, Ahmed Qureshi, was a pleasure having you. Thank you so much, Sayyid Muhammad Ali, and Lieutenant General retired Naeem Khalid Lodi Saab. Was a pleasure having you, sir, and thank you so much for your presence. And that's all we have for this hour. I'll see you inshallah tomorrow at 8. Till then, you take good care. Khuda Hafiz.